Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report presented by Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, the first podcast to bring you the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. We have a great report lined out for you guys, but first, let's hear who's making the show possible this week. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Great Days Outdoors magazine. If you hunt or fish in Alabama or the Deep South, you know that it's different down here. Spawning seasons, patterns, and food sources are not the same as they are in other areas of the country. At Great Days Outdoors magazine, Southern outdoor writers pick the brains of the best Southern hunters and anglers and give you the best how-to, where-to, and when-to articles, along with so much more. Pick up a Great Days Outdoors magazine subscription and become a better Southern outdoorsman. Great Days Outdoors magazine can be found at your local Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, Tractor Supply Company, Rural King, Bass Pro Shops, or you can save and buy online at greatdaysoutdoors.com. And also brought to you by Fishing Chaos, fishing tournaments coming up near you. Mobile Bay Kayak Fishing Association is hosting a free December fish out sponsored in part by Humminbird. Fishing boundaries are from the Navarre Beach Causeway to the east, and the west boundary is the Mississippi River. One lucky winner will win a Helix 9 fish finder valued at over $1,500. There is an undisclosed mystery link. The angler who catches the first speckled trout matching or closest to the mystery link wins the Humminbird Helix 9 fish finder. There are also prizes for first, second, and third place, determined by the aggregate length of 3 speckled trout. Big fish prizes will also be awarded on a weekly basis. Fishing lasts from December 4th to December 31st of 2021. The mystery link will be revealed when the tournament closes. To register, simply download the Fishing Chaos app or go to www.fishingchaos.com and register for a free Fishing Chaos user account. Then go to the Club tab on the left side menu. Find the Mobile Bay Kayak Fishing Association Club and join the club. After joining the club, go to tournaments at the button of the club page and register for the December fish off. And also brought to you by Mustad Fishing. Today, 1 in 4 hooks in the world is made by Mustad Fishing. The Mustad brand can be found in over 160 countries and covers all disciplines of fishing. Now more than just a hook manufacturer, they have expanded their product range over the years to satisfy every need of the modern fisherman and woman. They understand that anglers like you would never accept anything less than premium quality, which is why they hold themselves to that same standard. See why Mustad is the best-selling hook brand in the world. Enjoy 25% off your next order at mustad-fishing.com by using code GREATDAYS at checkout.
Hey guys, and welcome to another special episode of the Great Days Outdoors Podcast Network. This week, myself and Butch Theory are going to be talking about something that we probably don't really have to think about too much here in the South, and that's winterizing your boat. Butch, you might need to do a little winterization where you are, man. Where are we talking to you from today?
Man, I'm just north of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and you want to talk about some winterization. I think it's about 22 degrees out here. I feel like myself, I'm getting a good dose of winterization, if you know what I mean, Cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, winterization means different things to different people, you know, as far as vessels and things like that. If you have an outboard engine, it's going to be one thing in the South. If you have a outboard engine in the North, it's going to be a little bit different as far as, you know, bigger boats too. It all just kind of depends on how much you fish and where you are. So I'm looking forward to getting educated on that today.
Yeah, me too. We're talking with Anthony Del Greco, who is a Southern boy who finds himself in the North. So he's going to be able to talk about running boats and working on boats and winterizing boats in all types of climates. But we're going to get into what you really need to think about if you are in a Southern climate and what you need to pay special attention to. And I think it's going to spark some ideas for folks, because I know I've never really quote unquote winterized a boat, you know, in South Alabama, but there's definitely some things I was missing on. And there's definitely some things that I've come back to in the spring and said, Dad, gummit, why did I put it up like this? So talking over that with Anthony today. Let's get into it, man.
All right, Joe, today we're going to be talking about winterization and what exactly that means to you. We have Anthony Del Greco joining us today. How are we doing today, Anthony?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, man. I think a great start would be just to kind of tell us where you are and a little bit about Anthony, and just give us a little bit about your background and where you got to where you are today.
All right. Well, currently living up about 30 miles south of Burlington, Vermont. Moved here from Jupiter, Florida. That's where I grew up as a kid, did my boating down there. You know, as I grew up in Jupiter, you know, always working, being on boats, you know, took it to a career level once I got older, restoring boats, working on boats, traveling on boats, fishing on boats. And a lot of them always led me up north one way or the other. You know, some going to New York, New Jersey, Maryland, you know, really anywhere up the coast. And a couple of them brought me up through the Great Lakes, one up Mississippi River. You know, on those boats, part of it always included winterizing boats. We do that for a few reasons. A lot of preventative maintenance, and it can be a little bit different depending on where you are. Down in Jupiter, we would never winterize boats. Down in South Florida, we would go depending on hours and do your routine maintenance. So as you move up the coast, it's a little bit more important to winterize your boats in different manners. Some guys up in near Virginia, New Jersey, up there, they might not do as much as somebody that's, up here in Vermont or out in Minnesota, say. I know some of those guys on the East Coast, they'll fish throughout the season when they get a tight weather window. There's still certain things that you want to do, though.
And that's what I want to know, Anthony. Like, when it comes to winterization, I mean, you think about guys like us, we're down here in the South, we still get freezing temperatures in certain parts of the South. As you go down into southern Florida, a lot of times they don't even see freezing temperatures. But more importantly, from a winterization standpoint, what are we really trying to prevent from happening? I mean, what are the things that specifically cold weather are going to cause?
Well, most importantly, if you've got a boat in the water or that has water still in it, freezing water expands and will destroy anything that it's in, pipes, engines, anything, pumps, anything that water is still sitting in. When it freezes, it will expand and break it. And then you're chasing a whole list of nightmares usually from there.
Whole nother list of problems, I would have to imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you caught it, that's a great thing. But maybe you didn't catch it, and you get like you said, you get a fracture in any kind of hose or pipe, and then that can
figure
lead
it out
to a
60
cascade.
miles offshore. Right.
Where's that temperature break, Anthony? Like where Butch is in South Alabama, you're going to see some probably upper 20-degree temperatures, Butch, I would imagine.
Yeah, it usually freezes a couple different times a year.
Yeah, usually get a couple of hard freezes a winter. In that kind of climate, is winterization really a thing?
No, one thing that I would be more concerned about there is, and it's easy as just adding a fuel additive. You can add fuel additives to help prevent moisture buildup, or, depending gas, diesel, two-stroke, you can have algae buildups in your fuel, depending on colder temperatures, moisture buildup in the tanks. And, again, if you have that, then you're going to be dealing with, a list of things, clogging, fuel filters, injectors, carburetors, again, a list of items that alone could damage.
So when we talk about winterization, we're talking about specifically dealing with the effects of cold temperatures, but it might be better to think of it as off-season. This is what you need to do in the off-season for your boat if you have one. Getting back to the winterization question, where does someone really need to start paying attention to winterization, quote unquote, dealing with cold weather in marine environments?
I can't say exactly.
I would think it also has a lot to do with how often you use your vessel as well. Like you were talking about the guys over in Virginia Beach. I mean, I lived there for a little while, and all throughout the winter and, even the colder months, January, February, we were always chasing striper or trout up in the river or something. Same goes for down here. These guys fish 12 months out of the year. So I would assume that has a lot to play in it as well.
Exactly. And, some of these guys with the newer 4-strokes, they're not fogging them at all. They get a weather window for a day or two. They are, firing the boat up and they're taking it out, but there are guys, if you know that you're going to be put, like me with all my winter projects I have going on, I know that I'm not touching my boat during winter. So since I know that it's going to be sitting, that's when I'll go ahead and do my winterizing and all my preventative maintenance measures.
So you mentioned, those, we'll just call them, southern climates. What does winterization mean to you in a southern climate? What are you thinking about in the winter months?
When I think about it, I just do all of my, again, down there, you're not really concerned about the temperatures affecting your vessel. So, on the off season, I do all of my preventative maintenance measures, all of your oil changes, inspect your oils when you're changing them, change spark plugs, inspect those as well. It's something that, down in South Florida, the winter season is great for sail fishing. So you're not going to want to encounter a problem when the sail fishing's hot, and have to deal with it while all your buddies are out fishing. So, in between seasons and on the off season, that's when I would, just do it all, pull prop, check your shaft, grease everything. If you've got a inboard, outboard, check all your splines on your shafts, your O-rings on your splines. You want to make sure that those types of things are usually need taken care of once a year anyways. So, again, when I think about winterizing and down south in Florida, it may not mean fog your engine and tent it off. But again, it's a good time to do all your regular maintenance. And again, that's dependent on your make, what year it is, and so forth.
For the guys that are going to deal with those cold temperatures, what's that next step? What are you doing to really, quote unquote, winterize?
Well, again, me, I put my boat up for good in the winter. And say if we're going that route, first what I'll do is, add your fuel stabilizer. I usually use Seafoam. There's a list of products, but Seafoam's been around. It's always worked great for me on many engines. I usually just stick with that. Once I add the fuel stabilizer in, I'll go down, pull the prop off. You're going to be running the boat. You're going to be doing maintenance. It's good just to have the prop off, inspect your shaft, all that at that point. Once the prop's off, I'll hook the water up and run the boat. It's good to warm the oil up, get the fuel stabilizer running through, and then kill your engine, kill the water. That's a good time while it's hot. Change your oils. Again, I'm very critical on inspecting my oils. Your oil tells you everything that your engine's doing. Colors, smells, possible metal shavings in your oil. That's always really good stuff to watch out for. Once I change my oil, change the filters, I'll start it back up. And again, since I'm letting it sit, I fog the engine, take off. Older two-strokes, older carbureted engines, you can just pull your spark arrestor off, pull your air intake off, and you can just fog it right into the carburetors until it's like heavy fogging. Make sure your house windows are closed. Make sure the wife's away because it's yeah, it may aggravate some neighbors there.
Part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it. So you want to fog that. Two strokes, pull your spark plugs out, spray some of that fog into each cylinder. Inspect. It's a good time to inspect the spark plugs, especially on the two strokes. And from there, and by the way, a lot of these newer engines too, they're putting little nozzles on the side. There's a little solenoid, and again, it's dependent on the make and manufacturer of the year where this solenoid's located. But there's like a little air valve that you can now, instead of having to pull off your spark arrestor, your air intake and all that, having to pull off all the plastic covers, you can hook these fogging cans right up to this air valve, which is nice, and it's a lot more efficient too.
Let's take a quick break and hear from a few of this week's sponsors. That segment was brought to you by KillerDock. As anglers, we put a lot of time, money, and passion into fishing, but most of us do not have a fish cleaning station that we are proud of. Many of us are suffering from dock dysfunction. A rotten table with rusty metal, this is just no good. But the dock enhancement that we've all been waiting for is finally here. KillerDock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. KillerDock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit KillerDock.com to see more. And also brought to you by Foster Contracting, Fortified Roofing Pros. Do you need a new roof? Do you have wind or hail damage? You may qualify for a free roof. Foster Contracting will inspect and provide you with an estimate, stress-free, and they will handle your claim with your insurance. Your roof is your first line of defense this storm season. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your day. Foster Contracting has you covered. Check them out at www.fortifiedroofingpros.com or give them a shout at 251-447-2978.
One of the things that I've personally experienced, and it's frustrating, you get your boat out in the spring. I like to hunt, so winter is typically a time I spend less time on the boat. So
yeah.
I get that boat out in the spring, you're getting fired up, you're ready to go. You pull the cowling off, or you look underneath, look under a hatch somewhere, and you see corrosion, and you see that corrosion that you're like, oh God, this is not something I'm going to be able to necessarily just fix. What areas do you need to pay special attention to when it comes to corrosion prevention before you put your boat up?
So that's actually one of the very last steps of my winterizing process. Once you get, all your engine maintenance done, your block drain, your antifreeze in there, all of your preventative maintenance stuff like that done. One thing I do, really clean your boat, clean inside your hatches, clean under your console, anywhere you can get, you don't want to find a sandwich or some shrimp or something from the summertime. You don't want to find it next spring. But one other thing that I do when I'm in cleaning all those areas is inspect everything, wipe everything. One of the products that I use for that corrosive problem is a product called Corrosion Block. It's like a silver can with like blue and green letters, I think. And that corrosion block works great on everything. Even my fishing tackle, when I come back in from a long weekend of fishing and my reels are caked in dried salt, it works the same on your engine block, on any terminals, stuff like that. Spray this corrosion block, take an old toothbrush, hit the areas really good, wipe it with a rag afterwards, and you'll be surprised. This isn't a sponsored ad, but I do love Corrosion Block.
Yeah.
I carry a lot of it in my garage.
Oh man, I mean, seems like when you meet guys that are meticulous about caring for their equipment and their equipment's always running well, and that's one of the things they pay special attention to is lubrication. Yep. And corrosion prevention. Man, if you keep things lubricated yep. and you keep things oiled, it's amazing how much better it all runs. I'll tell you, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't think about is keeping a cover on their boat. I feel like a lot of people feel like a cover is you're trying to keep the aesthetics of your boat intact. But I actually had an experience a couple of years ago that sold me on keeping a cover on a boat really just about any time I'm not using it. And we had our boat out of the water and parked in our yard on the trailer. And it was the time of year that the live oaks were just dropping all their leaves like crazy. And we just had it out for just maybe a week or something. It wasn't a big deal. I'd put the boat up clean. Everything was cleaned out like you talked about. All the hatches were cleaned out, everything. And I came back and that boat was absolutely covered with live oak leaves. And you think, like I thought that day, no big deal.
Blow them out,
spray them out, grab them, get them out of there. No big deal. And that's exactly what I did. I sprayed them out, got the big vast majority of them out, or so I thought. And I actually was out fishing and I was in a tower on the boat, so 23-foot center console, and I started to notice the boat porpoising a little bit. And I thought I was, trimmed wrong. So I was fooling with the trim tabs and it wouldn't quit porpoising. And so I came down off plane and climbed down out of the tower and was looking, and I looked behind me and the wake was almost over the transom. And I was like, what is going on? I lifted up the back hatch and the water was completely full up to the deck line in the bilge. And I'm like, what in the heck, what is going on? And then the boat started listing, that water in that bilge. It was so full, the boat was listing. And I was like, oh man, I mean, it was the closest I've ever come to capsizing and really feeling like I was in danger. And luckily I was near shore. I was able to just get the boat and run it up on the beach, open up the hatch, manually bail water until I found out what the problem was, which was my bilge pumps were clogged with live oak leaves. And you think about something as simple as a boat cover, keeping leaves off your boat. You don't think about leaves being something put it this way, if we would have been offshore, if I wouldn't have had that beach to be able to run that boat up on, we would have sunk that day, or we would have capsized at least over some live oak leaves. And something that simple as a boat cover could prevent you from having a horrible day on the water. Is a cover a must for you? I mean, it is for me now, of course. Hopefully other people will hear that. But if you're not parking it in an area where you're dealing with live oak leaves or anything like that, I mean, what do you think about covers?
It depends on a location. Like out here where we are in Vermont, if I put a cover on my boat here, then I'm probably going to have a raccoon or a skunk or a bear eat it soon enough.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of areas, like you said, the leaves in the bilge. Not only that, leaves will I've seen them destroy paint. They sit there long enough and rain, and and that those leaves will like dye the paint. I don't really know if you could wax that out or not. I haven't had to deal with that process of it. But a cover is very important. It is nice also if you are down south, you get different trees, pine needles, stuff like that.
Yeah, it does keep the aesthetics up. And I'm glad you mentioned the raccoons up there. What about animal infestations? I mean, one of the things that I've dealt with in storing like UTVs and tractors and things like that at my hunting camp, mice get in there, and they want that warmth. I mean, have you seen problems with animals on boats?
Well, I've been told, one of the older guys I used to work with, I don't know how true this is. He told me that the wires or the coating that they use for wires has some type of soy product in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what helps, keep the metals inside good for years and years. And the rats go for that chemical that they use, that soy chemical in the coating of the wires. Yeah. That's always a chase on boats, even guys that live on boats full time. And, I think in certain areas, it's unavoidable getting animal infestations, areas that around here, we live on a lot of land. So, we do have to worry about those on certain parts of the land. There's animals taking over, those garages and stuff that are in those areas. I just make sure to frequent them as often as possible. Certain areas I'll leave a light on. In my winterizing process, I don't really like to leave power hooked up to the boat. I'll even disconnect my battery and bring it inside so it's not sitting out in the cold. I want a dead boat so I can just forget about it. A cover is nice, to keep if you're in an area where it snows, it will keep snow from entering your boat. A lot of people shrink wrap them. If you spend the money to get it shrink wrapped, that's great. You don't have to worry about animal infestation then. It's wrapped tight, but it keeps snowfall out, and then if you're getting snowfall in your boat, it's going to melt. It's going to get in your bilge hatches, refreeze, and then you're getting water into the boat. So yeah, me, I keep it under a roof, but no cover on it, but if I was to not have it under a roof, I would probably think about maybe shrink wrapped. A typical boat cover, I've seen them where they're like opened up in the back next to the engine, and that those types of openings and stuff might allow animals to come in. And up here in the north, when it's snowing, these animals are looking for any dry, warm place to go. So if it's a totally sealed off enclosure, it's definitely a good thing, definitely a good route to go down, for a few reasons.
Anthony's talking about a bigger boat, something that, has a large engine room or things like that. We were talking a little bit earlier about, you're going to close the vents that go to outside to prevent that cold from coming in and critters and things like that. What about like I know I've seen people do space heaters, and that just scares me with the risk of fire. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard of people doing that, closing everything off, putting a small bilge heater in there, depending on the size of the boat. Cabins, I got a buddy that's got some type of bow rider cruiser, like a Sea Ray thing, and he usually puts some type of small heater in there. It does help with, or dehumidifier, it does help with smells also in the cabin. But again, I would say just winterize your boat properly, and I wouldn't suggest. I don't like putting power, especially a heater, in it. You hear of a lot of bad incidents happening.
Anthony, you mentioned fuel additives and making sure you add that fuel additive, letting it run through your fuel system. What's your feelings on ethanol blended fuel? I try to run marine fuel, non-ethanol fuel, really in every small engine that I have and on my boats. Is that fact or fiction? I mean, what's your thoughts on using ethanol fuels in your boat?
I like ethanol free, and to be honest, I hate to admit it because it is a lot more expensive to operate this way, but I've got a couple small engines that I can definitely tell as soon as I add ethanol to the fuel, any percentage, they run horrible. Those engines, this is the part that I hate to admit, but I go to Home Depot and purchase an engineered fuel with 0 ethanol in it. And those engines run like race engines when you put that true ethanol-free fuel in them. So yeah, just since I run that fuel and I really pay attention to things like that, notice big differences when I run an engineered fuel that's true zero ethanol and notice the difference. Yeah, I think I think that plays a big role.
So, Anthony, what I've heard you say is winterization can mean different things depending on what your climate is. You've got to ultimately make the call on if it's getting cold enough to do the things you need to do to deal with that cold temperature. But when the guys up north are thinking about winterization, the guys down south need to be thinking about what's my off season. If that's the winter time, that's a great time to take care of your preventative maintenance, your routine maintenance, and do some things that are going to help your boat store well. That's what
and perform better.
Yeah.
Whenever it's time to go.
Yeah. Did we miss anything in this conversation?
No, you were talking about the issue with your leaves in your bilge pump, and it made me thinking about all the issues with boats. One other preventative maintenance winterizing process that I go through, not only corrosion block all of your bare metals, and areas like that. I also take apart a lot of my electrical connections and will super lube them with dielectric grease, even the back of your chart plotters and stuff. These things are a few grand now. I mean, it takes 30 seconds to unscrew the back of that thing, put some dielectric grease in, pull your bilge pumps out, check them. I'll, as I'm washing, put water down there, check, make sure your float switches are working. Just everything that could go wrong,
Right.
You just want to try and stay on top of it, keep the boat clean, keep your engine clean, that way when something small fails, hopefully easy to spot.
All right, Anthony, man, we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with our listeners. We appreciate your education. If folks want to, look you up and see if they need some maintenance up there in Vermont, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Awesome. Yeah. So my company is Greco's Carpentry. I'm also on Boaters List. Check it out. They're firing it up, but I'd like to see this go. I know a lot of friends that use it down in Florida, a couple up the coast, and hopefully we see more people on it. I think it's going to be a real good platform that people could use.
Absolutely agree. We look forward to talking with you next time whenever we have a mechanical question, buddy. Have a great week.
Thanks so much. You too, guys. Take care.
Well, that was another awesome segment, and it was brought to you by Fishbites. Are you tired of stinking baits? Fishbites don't stink or leave a stink on hands and everything else. They don't require bait buckets or ice to stay fresh while you fish. Fishbites can withstand numbers of bait stealers for many, many minutes. Won't come off the hook during a hard cast or in rough waters. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits and tackle at fishbites.com. And also brought to you by Photonis Defense. Photonis Defense is proud to offer the PD Pro line of night vision systems. The PD Pro series is the world's smallest and lightest night vision goggles built around the Photonis 16mm filmless 4G image intensifier tubes and their hybrid filmless 18mm image intensifier tubes. The ultra-light, ultra-compact night vision systems deliver cleanest image, best resolution, smallest, most transparent halo, and best overall performance and function of any night vision system available. The PD Pro line consists of the PD Pro M 16mm monocular, the PD Pro B 16mm binocular, and the PD Pro Q panoramic night vision system. Photonis Defense, masters of darkness. All right, folks, we're going to be talking about gaffs today and choosing the best fishing gaff. It's an important tool you have on the boat. It's important that it lasts. It's an important tool whenever you need it. So we're going to talk to Joe Baya over at Northwest Florida about choosing the best fishing gaff. And today we have Isaac and Mark with Bubba. How are we doing today, guys?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, man. I guess we'll start with Isaac. Just kind of tell us a little bit about Isaac and what you do over at Bubba and just give us the rundown.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for having us. So I'm the brand manager for Bubba. I focus on managing all of our marketing efforts. And then I also play a role in helping us decide, what products we want to go after, what products we want to sell, and just kind of the marketing and brand side of product development.
Awesome. What about you, Mark?
I'm on the product development side. So I'm part of the team that takes a concept and turns it into reality. So we design the product and get it through to production and out the door.
Awesome.
Well, Mark, I'm excited to hear more about the design and the R&D that goes into these, the way that y'all construct your gaffs, because the R&D that went into it for me when I was building gaffs, when I was using them a lot, was basically a bamboo pole, a big old shark hook, a
really
screw,
good bolt.
Yeah, a good screw to go through that bamboo pole, and one
Usually
of those
a big fishing hook.
hose clamps, and some electrical tape, and
big fishing hook.
yeah. But that being said, I want to hear everything that goes into how you guys build your gaffs. And like Butch said in the beginning part of the show, being in the position we're in, we get exposed to a lot of different products on the market, and we've had an opportunity to use Bubba gaffs, and we love them. I mean, they're well built, they're balanced well. We've had good success with them, and we've put them in the hands of some of the best charter anglers around, and they tell us the same thing, and they've held up to. We're going to talk about something we want to have used it ourselves, and we want it to have stood the test of time, and y'all's products have so far for us. So whenever we're thinking about getting a gaff, if someone's in the market for a gaff and they want to outfit themselves with either a gaff or a set of gaffs to keep on their boat, what are some of the first questions that somebody needs to ask themselves? I mean, let's just take the length of the gaff and start there. Why make different lengths, and what are those main decision points as why you would choose longer versus shorter or vice versa?
Yeah, sure. So they've come a long way from the beginning, I guess, right? From a bamboo pole with a hook on the end of it to like ours, for example, carbon fiber construction and the high grade marine grade steel for the hook. Honestly, a lot of that comes down to personal preference, and to some degree, the hook size, it sort of depends on what you're looking for in the performance of that hook. And we kind of struck sort of a middle ground to a range of what we think most people are going to need in a hook. I mean, you could get by with a smaller 1 or 2 inch hook, like what you're describing as like the archaic beginnings of a gaff. Ours are a 3 inch or a 4 inch size hook, and then that goes on either a 5 foot or a 7 foot length. Now the length is kind of dependent on, to some degree, what type of boat you're going on. 6 foot kind of seems to be that sort of breaking point where things can get a little bit dicey as far as like what you can accommodate on the size of your boat. So a smaller boat's going to have a tricky time having a good spot to store a longer length gaff. And so we're kind of on both sides of that, where the 5 foot should easily store in just about any boat that's going to want a gaff on it. The 7 foot is for the guy that wants a little extra length. I mean, there's people out there that want even longer, 9 foot, probably even more than that if it were available. We did quite a bit of a market study on what people need, and you actually made a good point in the beginning of this. You mentioned that you've sent out gaffs to a lot of different pro users, a lot of people that are out there on the water every day, and we take that into consideration on on any design, really, on what we're developing, and the gaffs is no exception to that. We took a lot of feedback from the pro users that are out there day in and day out using these kinds of products, and that made its way into the design. So that's kind of the starting core assortment, I guess, of our gaff sizes. Shortly after we launched the 5 and 7 foot length gaffs, we also came out with a portable size gaff, which is a 3 foot length, and that comes on a 3 inch hook. And that was actually kind of taken into consideration some of the feedback even after production that we were getting from a lot of our influencers and some key players out on the field. And a lot of that feedback was coming back to us on, hey, we need a smaller gaff that can be either a secondary gaff or just for, let's not forget about the kayakers and the even smaller boats that can't handle a 5 foot or a 7 foot gaff. So that kind of filled a void there on coming out with a portable size on that 3 foot.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm really hearing you say is like, if you can get away with it, the longer, the better, because that's going to give you additional reach. You're going to be able to gaff fish that are further away, that are deeper potentially, even though that kind of gets back into that technique, Butch.
For sure.
So you are going to be able to gaff fish that are further away, but you got to keep that storage in mind. You got to ask yourself, what kind of boat do I have? What kind of storage do I have? And additionally, you also need to think about your gunnel height.
I would think that gunnel height is probably the most. I mean, Joe and I cut our teeth on, bigger boats. So 65, my brother's boat's a 65 by 20. I mean, the gunnel height on that thing at the top of the rail is probably 8 feet off the water.
Yeah, I mean, you got a 5 foot gaff on that boat, Butch. You're going to have to hold on to my ankles while I reach out there and try to gaff fish.
Which we've done, unfortunately.
That's happened before.
which we've done, unfortunately.
Don't recommend that.
No, not safe.
But no, yeah. So, I mean, back to what you were saying, I mean, it seems like if you can get away with the longer length, there's really is there a penalty for having a longer gaff if if you've got the ability to store it?
If you got the storage space for it, yeah, I mean, that just means you have more reach to get that fish in the boat easier. As soon as you can gaff it, the better off your odds are at getting that, especially if it's a big fish, getting that into the boat. And the tournament guys really want that longer gaff because they want to be reaching as soon as feasible,
right,
to get that trophy fish on board. So
yeah, I mean, you think about something, Butch, like you think about like gaffing a tuna. If you're gaffing one instead of harpooning one, like, if you've got to gaff that fish, he's up there, he's doing big circles. A lot of times he gives you an opportunity where he's at the surface of the water. But if you can't reach him, you can't gaff him. And how many times have we seen it where they're in those last few circles and he's just out of reach of the gaff? He's up on the top of the water. He's gaffable, but you can't reach him. And then you get that line pinched in the corner of their mouth, or they make some crazy run right at the end. You lose a lot of fish right there at the gaff. That extra length.
I've seen some lost gaffs that way too, though. You can't reach too far now.
Well, you can't reach too far. And, I mean, that's the thing. If you've got a long enough gaff, you can stay where you need to be and not.
Well, you talk about a penalty being for a long gaff. Is there an IGFA rule for that? That's a question we need to ask.
I don't know.
Have to Google that up.
Yeah. So getting back to, you're talking about hook sizes, okay, and let's talk about personal preference versus matching your hook to the size of your fish that you intend to gaff. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like you mentioned having a 3-inch and a 4-inch gap. Personally, I've always liked to have if I can get away with it, a smaller gaff rather than a bigger gaff. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to come up with a response on that every single person's going to agree on. You can get by with a smaller hook size for sure. And it sort of depends on what you're going after too. I mean, the majority of the fish you're going to gaff to get on board, you can use a smaller hook size, and reach comes into play on that too. So having a solid hookup, the first reach with that gap does kind of come into play a little bit there.
So in your experience, like you said, reaching out, having these gaffs tested, like you said, it seems to boil down to a matter of personal preference, but what's the reason for going up in size? Like, why wouldn't everybody just say, where do those preferences come from? Where does that stem from? I mean, personally, I know I've tried to gaff, like take something like a wahoo, for example. It's a slender fish. I have definitely had a situation where we've tried to gaff a wahoo with a gaff that had too wide of a gap and ended up actually picking the fish up instead of getting the point of the hook in it. So what are people telling you guys with regards to why they have that preference? Is there any penalty for, I mean, I've also seen it where we've tried to gaff tuna with too small of a gaff and had that hook rip out. So does having that bigger hook on bigger fish set that hook better?
Some of that discussion kind of brings up the shape of the hook too. I mean, there's a lot of different profiles on that hook size, and the gap is just one of the details of it. I think we have the patent on the shape of on the profile of our hook. There was a fair amount of discussion on how to construct the shape of this hook and the way the pointed section of the hook is on approach relative to your reach. And if you look at our shape of the gaff, I mean, it's not just a simple loop. There's a few curve changes, and it's actually even slightly offset from the carbon fiber shaft.
Right.
And so that came about from just sort of collectively taking various points of feedback from a lot of different types of fishing. And again, deferring back to the pros that can probably speak to this a lot better than I can. They were giving us a lot of recommendations on, how this hook could perform the best. And then from there, we took it into testing on the materials and getting more into like strength characteristics and pull force, and basically making sure we have the strongest gaff out there compared to a lot of the competition.
So, back to what you were saying about the hook style, you guys actually have a patented hook style that you're using on your gaffs.
Yeah, we do have a patent on this product, which is kind of cool because it's just a hook on a pole, but
it's a very important pole though. If you've
ever
needed one that bad.
Hey, if you've ever lost a fish on the gaff, man,
it's painful.
I want something patented that somebody's put some thought into, because that's probably one of the worst feelings in fishing, I would think.
For sure. Yep.
And that sort of brings up, you even mentioned losing the gaff itself, and that automatically brings up our grip. I mean, the the detail that put all of our products on the map, actually the knives to begin with, what made Bubba Blade in the beginning was its grip and its non-slip characteristics. And we put the same material, same grip basically onto a gaff by inheriting some of the development, I guess, expertise that we had on that aspect alone and put that into the gaff. So obviously having a non-slip grip at the end of that while you're reaching for a potentially large fish on the other end of it, that definitely helps with avoiding losing pretty valuable tool in the moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that really kind of leads me to thinking about just construction as a whole. As I alluded to, I've gaffed a pile of fish with some very rudimentary gaffs. And the one thing I can say about that is all those gaffs eventually broke. They all failed. They all needed to be redone or just build a new gaff. And that's been one of the things that I've appreciated about y'all's gaffs is that, man, they look like the day we got them.
Yep.
And they've been put through the ringer. So what do y'all do? And then what does somebody need to look for, whether it's through a Bubba gaff or any gaff, but what kind of construction points does someone need to consider? I mean, you just think about knives where you've got full tang knives versus not full tang. I mean, all these kind of things play into the longevity. And when you're spending money on something, you want it to hold up. You want it to last you, really. Hopefully it's the last gaff you have to buy. So what are you guys thinking about in terms of construction?
There's kind of 3 categories you can kind of put that into. And as far as like thinking through the function of these things. So pull test is important. If you're to try to use this in some sort of cantilever motion where you're, bending the rod a lot, bending force obviously is important. And then the environmental effects. This is in probably one of the harshest environments out in salt water and indirect sunlight and hot temperature, cold temperature. So there's all of that. And we put a pretty extensive amount of testing through development in these products, and the little details like how the hook is attached to the carbon fiber, which is a tapered carbon fiber design, and how it's fixed to that, coupled with ensuring that it reaches basically an extreme pull test, something that, most people, it should exceed what most people can do to the thing. So you're not likely going to be picking up by a single gaff a 700-pound fish. Right. But we made it to exceed the limits of what the average use is what it's going to encounter out in the wild, I guess. And we basically we did some competitive testing. We did some prototype testing. We basically built the construction so that it outperforms whatever else we were testing against. And then of course, on the environmental torture, I guess, to the elements, we did, salt spray testing and UV testing and that kind of thing, just to make sure it holds up throughout the years of its exposure to sunlight and salt water and temperatures and all of that. So, I mean, what you're saying is kind of bringing up it's kind of highlighting the amount of testing that we put these things through before we put them into production.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it, man. And you are right. We put some of our fishing tackle through the most harsh environment ever. I mean, salt crushes anything it touches in any amount of exposure time. All right, folks, that wraps up another great segment. Y'all take a minute to check out a few more of this week's sponsors. That segment was brought to you by The Hunting Exchange. In this day and age, we all know it is a struggle to sell hunting equipment on a large social media platform, and that's where The Hunting Exchange steps in. Hunting Exchange is an app for iOS and Android that gives you a one-stop shop to buy and sell your hunting gear. Whether you're looking to sell your bow, broadheads, technical apparel, stands, saddles, or anything in between, this secure platform allows you to buy and sell gear with confidence. As a buyer, each dollar you spend is insured by PayPal, and as a seller, there are no hidden charges like other platforms, and listing items is also free. Gone are the days of having listings removed from Facebook and worrying about being banned and removed from groups for wanting to sell something as simple as your bow or knives. So head on over to the App Store or Google Play and experience a new hassle-free way to buy and sell hunting gear by downloading the Hunting Exchange app today. And also brought to you by Sam's Bait and Tackle. Sam's Stop and Shop is your one-stop shop located at 27122 Canal Road in Orange Beach, Alabama. Sam's has a little bit of everything, including a deli, inshore, offshore, and surf fishing tackle. They also have bait, clothing, groceries, name brand sunglasses, and so much more. Sam's also has tackle experts and podcast contributors Chris Veche and Dusty Hayes on hand to answer any questions you may have about any type of local fishing and can also repair your rods and reels if necessary. Stop by and shop or call them at 251-981-4245 today. So we're talking about that carbon fiber shaft. Why carbon fiber? There's so many other materials that you could have made it out of. Tell us a little bit about that.
The obvious response is the weight. Everybody thinks of carbon fiber as like a lightweight construction, right? Especially when you factor in its strength to weight ratio. So it's one of the strongest type of constructions you can make out there for relative to its weight. And so, most of the gaffs out there are a fiberglass or even like a wood construction, or so those are going to have more flex. They're probably not going to be able to hold up to the load as well. And then the environmental side of it, they're really, or the element side of it, they're really resistant to the saltwater exposure and sunlight exposure and all of that.
Yeah, and that gets back to what you were saying about bending force. I know.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and say it, Butch. I have bent a gaff before. I have torn the hook off of a gaff before.
All of the above.
I have not lost a gaff.
I've never lost a gaff. Actually, that's not true. I had a dolphin pull a bamboo out of my hand one time, but it floated, so I got it back. That doesn't count.
No, that doesn't count. You had to actually lose.
Yeah.
But I had to definitely say that. But yeah, all
definitely
those
bent a lot of gaffs.
I have experienced bends and gaffs. I've experienced hook failures, hooks coming off of gaffs. I've experienced like what you guys
oxidation.
Said, the oxidation,
yep.
the corrosion, the UV stress. I mean, all these things deteriorate over time. Every single one of those things I've experienced, and so y'all have taken all that into account. Now, you're talking about this carbon fiber, and you mentioned that it's one of the strongest in terms of strength to weight. What's the thought process on the actual weight of the gaff? Because I don't know, like sometimes I want a nice light gaff, like if I'm gaffing something like a dolphin, for example, I want to be able to move quickly. Whereas if I'm gaffing something like a tuna, I really like a little bit heavier gaff.
Need a little meat there.
It pulls through the water, I think, a little bit better.
Yeah.
I think it sinks deeper. It's almost like it hits harder.
I think that fish reacts to it more too. Whenever you send one home good, they just freeze up.
They just kind of, we've all seen that. You gaff something like a cobia that's known for just beating you to death.
Nuts.
I mean, if you stick them with a big hook versus a small hook, and it's got some weight behind it, it's almost like a hydrostatic
Stunner.
shock from a rifle. It stuns them for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So is there much variation in y'all's lineup in terms of weight, and what went into those weight considerations?
Well, so maybe more so to weight. You're mentioning its approach on the fish, and that's usually a pretty quick moment that's happening, and so the faster you can wheel that thing around and get it to home is pretty key. Our carbon fiber shafts have a tapered design, so it kind of skinnies up on its way to the end where the hook is at, and that helps with its movement through the water, so you don't have to push as much water out of the way to get that hook in place. And from there, the length of the shaft sort of determines its taper to some degree. But on a 3-foot gaff, you're not as worried about that, wielding that much on that much of an extension, getting that hook from, quite a few feet away to where it needs to be. On a 3-foot, you're just not reaching as far.
Sure.
Gotcha.
So the taper kind of varies a little bit with the different gaff lengths.
So if I'm wrapping this up correctly, guys, I mean, what I've heard today is that if you can store it, longer is going to be more versatile than shorter. And kind of the same thing with in terms of choosing your hook gap size, like if you can use a larger hook gap is going to have the ability to gaff more types of fish. But if you're dealing with a very specific situation, like you mentioned with the kayaker, or maybe the guy who's gaffing a bunch of king mackerel, something that's narrow, it's
long
not
and skinny.
Yeah, long and skinny. So you're going to be better off going with a shorter gap on those hooks. And then from there, you just need to pay attention to the actual value that you're getting. If you're looking at price tags, you got to ask yourself, how long is this thing going to last? Is it built to last? Do you guys offer any kind of warranty on your gaffs? I mean, what can folks expect out of those?
Yeah, they have a 1-year warranty, I believe.
Well, the last thing I think I need to know is I think everybody's familiar with Bubba Blade at this point. Why gaffs, guys? I mean, why did y'all get into this market?
Yeah, so when Bubba started, it strictly was just fillet knives, and we wanted to be more than just fillet knives. We wanted to be kind of an all-encompassing fishing brand, and we wanted to tell the water to plate story. That's who we are, and that's what we want to be able to do. So we don't want it to just be fillet knives. We want to take you all the way from catching your fish, and that's why we're coming out with rods, all the way to your tools that you're going to use to get the fish. So pliers, gaffs being one, then to your fillet knives, you cut up the fish. And then lastly, we just came out with our kitchen set to complete it. So we can really take you water to plate. And gaffs were a necessity for that, especially with a lot of the fish that folks are eating. You're going to need to gaff a fish. And so for us to be able to tell that story and tell it well from start to finish, gaffs were a must-have for our product selection. And we knew that we could take them and bubbify them and make them a premium, high-quality product. And that's what we did. So I really think that our gaffs fit well within our product selection and really do an awesome job.
I love that word. That's
Bubbify.
very, that's going to go over well in our Alabama, Northwest Florida audience is Bubbify.
Right.
I like it. Well, guys, if folks want to check out the lineup of gaffs and see, everything that's there, where should they go? I mean, are there more resources to kind of make their own selection? Where can you point folks to?
Yeah, so bubba.com is going to be your best resource. They are available at other retailers. It's based on your location. They may be there in store or online, but bubba.com has a full selection, full inventory of all the gaffs that we have to offer. And that's going to be the best place to find information, see pictures, product videos, etc. So if you want to learn more, bubba.com.
Guys, thanks
Awesome.
for joining us. As we alluded to in the beginning part of the show, Butch and I are planning some gaffing technique content. Don't think it lines up well with the podcast platform, but I'm looking forward to that. We'll give you guys a shout once we get that in the works. But otherwise, hope you guys have a Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Thank you, guys.
Butch, I know it's a hook on a pole, but there's
It's
a lot.
very
There's a lot
important hook
to
on a pole.
Man, I took pride in my gaffing
Oh yeah.
when I was doing that.
Oh
and,
man, I used to practice for hours. I mean, I know that sounds stupid, but my dad wouldn't let me gaff a real fish for the longest time. I mean, I know, I'm sure you got the same school.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he would literally tie a bonita to a rope and drag it down the side of the dock, and I would have to practice gaffing for hours.
Yep. Yeah, there's a
I mean,
right way and a
whenever I
wrong
was-
way to do it, like everything. And
Everything, yeah.
I mean, gosh, you just think about like some of the foam grips you see on gaffs. That
yeah.
stuff's crap. It deteriorates over time. That's one of the things I've appreciated about these Bubba gaffs is that grip they've got is some good.
It lasts too.
It's good material. I mean, to be able to hold up to sunscreen, UV. I mean, it hasn't deteriorated. We've been using one for 3 years now.
Yeah.
So that's held up, and it sits outside. It's not like it's
No,
stored.
it's not inside or something nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's sitting in the sun all day long, 365 days a year. It's held up well in that regard. I've definitely seen gaffs just bend and get twisted.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing too, like when you gaff that fish, especially if it's a big fish, if you don't have a good grip and it twists in your hand or that fish surges or, God forbid you gaff it like in the back third of the fish.
And have to bow up a little bit.
If you don't have a good grip, your gaff's gone.
Yeah. The foam will come right off. I mean, I've had the foam slide off before.
Just slide right off the end of it and bye-bye.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so it's important.
And then you try the rope half hitch, the rope or the buoy cord half hitch technique where you do that and that, put some resin on that, super glue that, but that always comes
there's a
under
way
that too.
if there's a way to do it cheaply, and we've tried that.
Yeah.
And
A lot.
they all fail eventually.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, key to all this, of course, is you got to have good technique, but if you don't have a good equipment, technique's only going to take you so far. So
Agreed. All right, folks. Thanks for being with me this week on the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. Really appreciate all you guys. Really appreciate all the support that y'all have given us throughout this year and years prior. We look forward to hearing from you guys always. So shoot us an email at alabama@bestfishingreport.com if you have any tips, pointers. We are very open to constructive criticism. just give us a shout. We always enjoy hearing from all of our listeners. Guys, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like us to email you the podcast each week, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Again, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767 and subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the new show each week. You guys have a happy new year, and we'll talk to y'all next year. Keep whacking them. This Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report was brought to you by Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks are proud to be your metal roofing headquarters for over 40 years. Save time and money by buying from the most reliable manufacturer on the Gulf Coast. Buy it today, pick it up today. With the addition of their new store in Cantonment, Florida, they now have 8 locations to serve you. Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks, your metal roofing headquarters. And also brought to you by Advanced Transmission in Spanish Fort. Give the professionals a call who have been trusted on the Gulf Coast for over 25 years at 251-626-6061 or check them out online at www.advanced-transmission.com. And also brought to you by the Alabama Marine Resources Division. The Alabama Marine Resources Division reminds all recreational anglers that gray triggerfish, greater amberjack, or red snapper must be reported through Snapper Check prior to landing the fish in Alabama. For more information about Snapper Check, please visit outdooralabama.com.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report brought to you by me, Angelo DePaola, The Coastal Connection. Find us online at thecoastalconnection.com.
And also by MB Ranch King hunting blinds and feeders are built to last right here in the USA. They offer high quality, easy to use corn and protein feeders that can be filled with both feet on the ground. Call Kevin today for more info or a quote at 205-807-2937. MB Ranch King, built in the pursuit of perfection. And also brought to you by Bucks Island. They have new pontoon boats, bass boats, bow riders, and aluminum boats for sale. They provide boat service on all kinds of boats, even if they weren't purchased from Bucks. Visit them at 4500 Highway 77 in Southside, Alabama, or give them a call at 256-442-2588. And also brought to you by BoatersList.com. If you own or run a boat, you know how difficult it can be to find the right company for the task at hand. Sign up at BoatersList.com to find a company to work with on your next boat project. And also brought to you by Test Calibration. Test Calibration is your source for sales and service of diesel turbochargers and fuel injection systems since 1976. Contact them at 800-822-0057 or visit them online at testcalibratondieselandturbo.com.